Hey everyone, Wolf Lord Rho here. Today we continue our series, making a cause for each Primarch being the greatest, with Lion L. Johnson. A general spoiler warning to begin, as today we will be referencing events from across the Warhammer 40k universe. So you have been warned, but with that said, let's waste no time and just jump straight in. As much as my personal top 5 favourite Primarchs is an ever-changing thing, really depending on how I feel on the day or a story I've recently read, there are some Primarchs who are just locks to always be there. Leman Russ, Jagatai, and I'd say Lion L. Johnson too. Ever since I read the heresy story Savage Weapons, his reunion and duel with Conrad Kurz, I've just always liked him. And I've spoken several times over the years about how I feel that loyalty is its own reward moment was really the best thing that could have ever happened to him. Taking the Lion from a doubted mystery to an ironclad loyalist badass who didn't care if he wasn't going to get the plaudits or recognition, he was still just going to wreck the enemy. And this trait has become a dominant part of L. Johnson's identity since, as his character has evolved over the years, and he's really become and been portrayed as an incredibly strong Primarch. Absolutely in the running for being called the greatest. I think the fact that not many people would debate his name being in the conversation speaks for itself. Let's begin with his youth upon Caliban, a world dangerously close to the Eye of Terror, tainted by the effects of the warp, with monstrous beasts roaming its great forests. It was within these forests that L. Johnson would find himself, growing alone, completely removed from any human interaction. But not just surviving, but prospering, becoming a primal, animalistic, instinctive hunter. The apex predator, hunting down the great beasts that roamed the forest. For a full decade alone in the wild, L. Johnson would stalk his prey, before ultimately being found by Luther and the Knights of Caliban. From there, of course, he would quickly adapt to the ways of humanity and the Order, ascending to its ultimate leadership and leading a crusade across the world to rid its forests of the great tainted beasts of chaos. With the coming of the Emperor, the unification with the Imperium and his First Legion, the Dark Angels would be born. And L. Johnson didn't mess around, earning himself a clear reputation as a devastating strategist and tactician. However, becoming very distrusted by his brothers due to his quiet, secretive nature, the lasting effects of his life upon Caliban. And it would be within the Horus Heresy that L. Johnson's greatness would really come to the fore. Immediately upon hearing of Horus's rebellion, L. Johnson instantly moved to prevent him from taking the Forge World of Diamat, knowing full well Lupercal would need its siege weapons to assault the Throne World. And L. Johnson did this without the full force of his legion, with barely a handful of troops in fact, completely stymieing the War Master before Horus's advance could even begin. Again, showcasing his clinical, no-nonsense approach to war. Within the following Framus Crusade against Conrad and the Night Lord's Legion, despite having to chase his foe from system to system, L. Johnson would eventually ensnare the Night Lords within an ambush. 2 in fact, the first leaving the Night Lords heavily wounded, and with L. Johnson placing Conrad within a coma, and then the second shattering the strength of the Night Lords as a legion forevermore. After this, spotting Guilliman's Pharos beacon amid the Ruinstorm, L. Johnson would take his legion to Ultramar, with the full intent of demolishing Guilliman and the Ultramarines if he found them to be disloyal. And through the events of Imperium Secundus, L. Johnson would finally put Kurz down permanently, snapping the spine of his brother. After that, agreeing to be the distraction to help Sanguinius reach Terra, it would be L. Johnson that would lay waste to the remaining traitor homeworlds, his prosecuting crusade of vengeance. And so, while he may not have been at the siege, the heresy really showcased L. Johnson as an absolutely lethal opponent. And I think it's really two factors for me in particular that stand out. Maybe three. The first is his combat prowess. There's no two ways about it. He's been portrayed as an extremely deadly fighter. We've seen him defeat Conrad Kurz several times over, once placing him into a coma, the other time snapping his spine over his knee. And we know Conrad himself is a top-tier fighter amongst the Primarchs himself, so that is a pretty big victory. We've also seen him defeat Kairos Fateweaver, the greater demon of Tzeentch. I'm not really sure you can class the brawl with Russ as anything stand out, but it shows a different aspect to the otherwise pristine swordsman, a dirtier, tougher aspect he's willing to go to. And of course perhaps his greatest victory yet, defeating a rage-fueled demon-elevated Angron when he would return 10,000 years later. And this is after the Lion aging 10,000 years too, not being locked within stasis like Guilliman was, for example. And we have to be honest, it was a fight that the Lion pretty easily got up and walked away from after, not suffering any major damage. And that's impressive. Let me put it this way, do you think the Siege of Terra could have played out differently if Lion L. Johnson was there? If he was there to man the walls, fight Greater Demon and Traitor Brother alike? If he was there to board the Vengeful Spirit by his father's side? I think we know it would have. The second factor is L. Johnson's reputation in lore. Even his brothers see him as a threat. His aloofness, his eternal hunter aura that he exudes around them. It's kept him apart from his fellow Primarchs since the very beginning. As the first, Rabute Guilliman admitted he can't help but look up to L. Johnson, feeling awed by him, and that in his opinion, it was he that Horus Lupercal truly savoured being named War Master over. It's the fact that he will do whatever the Emperor needs him to, without hesitation, that he doesn't seek reward, and that the Emperor knows that all too well. The Emperor not even blinking for a moment when Malcador told him L. Johnson's heading to Ultramar. It was a given to the Emperor that L. Johnson was doing what he needed to do. He could have feared the Lion's intent, worried that he had turned, become traitor, but instead he simply tried to look across the galaxy to Macragge to see just what Guilliman was doing. That's a tremendous show of trust and faith in L. Johnson by his father, especially within the depths of the heresy, when sons were betraying him left, right and centre. And that perhaps links to the third fact, that it's heavily believed Lion L. Johnson is the one Primarch who was told the truth of chaos from the very beginning. That he was the one Primarch who could resist their whispers. There's other strong candidates for sure, but this trust of the Emperor, the lion growing alone on tainted Caliban, his apparent psychic ability to shield his mind, with even the Fate Weaver being unable to penetrate it, it all really feels like the lion has to be that Primarch. And that's a huge check in the greatest Primarch conversation. So, we have a Primarch who is in every who is the greatest fighter debate. We have a Primarch who is in every War Master debate, kept out only by his personality, not his ability. A Primarch who is undoubtedly a game changer. A Primarch who is possibly the only Primarch who was trusted with the full truth of chaos from the very beginning. And we have a Primarch who would do whatever needed to be done, without hesitation. He is quite simply the first, so why wouldn't he be the greatest? But as always everyone, what do you think? Do you see the arguments for Lion L. Johnson being the greatest? Does his prowess as a fighter and strategist give him a huge advantage? How about if indeed he is the one Primarch who was trusted with the knowledge of chaos? Is that a trust that elevates him over all others? Or do you feel his personality flaws matter in this kind of conversation? That actually you can't be the greatest when you can't read people, can't control your own emotions, simply can't understand human nature as you should. Do his secrets limit him? As always everyone, leave your thoughts in the comments below. Huge thank you to all my subscribers, your support truly means a lot to me, it really does. If you're new, please consider subscribing to help the channel grow. And if you enjoyed this particular vid, then why not drop a like on it too. But with that said, I am off, and I'll see you all again real soon.